Is Chief Justice John Roberts insane? Or just tone deaf? Or both? Why is he gaslighting America with a new annual report which completely ignores all the things that matter to the American people about the United States Supreme Court and its role in our lives? Who is his audience for this annual report? And we break it all down for you. We do an X-ray vision. We put on X-ray glasses twice a week on a podcast we call Legal AF. And here's a clip from Legal AF After Dark.
Let's talk about the United States Supreme Court. Let's talk about this completely tone deaf, as I say, dripping in lack of self-awareness annual report filed by or lodged or submitted by Chief Justice John Roberts. I guess this is an annual report where the Supreme Court says how great they are, why nobody should regulate them, and what they're worried about. So it's kind of a combination of patting themselves on the back, whining, and expressing their inner Freudian thoughts, if you will. And so you take a look at what John Roberts is saying in this report. He goes, unfortunately, not all actors engage in informed criticism or anything remotely resembling it. I feel compelled to address 4 areas of illegitimate activity that, in my view, do threaten the independence of judges, on which the rule of law depends. 1, violence. 2, intimidation. 3, disinformation. And 4, threats to defy lawfully entered judgments. I mean, seriously, dude, you and the right-wing justices on the Supreme Court found that Donald Trump has absolute immunity, a king-like immunity. It's the first time ever a ruling was someone is actually above the law if you say their acts are official in nature or core constitutional functions. And as Trump's own lawyer answered, yes, Trump can order SEAL Team 6 to kill political opponents. Sure, Congress can try to impeach, but that's well within the constitutional rights. And sure, you can sell nuclear secrets. You could take bribes. The Democratic appointed Supreme Court justices gave all those hypotheticals. And Trump's lawyer, who's now the Solicitor General, or will be the Solicitor General, meaning the main lawyer who argues before the Supreme Court in the Trump administration, a guy named John Sauer. I mean, to his credit, although it was sometimes hard to listen to his voice, he was just like, yeah, absolutely. We think we can do that. It's up to Congress if they want to impeach, but they'd have to impeach first. And so we don't think that these are outside the scope and province of what the president can do. Also, you just take a look at how this report opens up, the 2024 year-end report on the federal judiciary. And again, when I say dripping with lack of self-awareness and tone deaf, it does this whole scribe about this whole thing. December 1761, a little more than 1 year into what would be a 59-year reign of King George III, he decreed that from that date forward, colonial judges were to serve at the pleasure of the crown. This royal edict departed from the long-standing practice in England, enshrined by the Parliament in 1701 Act of Settlement, allowing the judges to retain their offices during good behavior. And as you go through this report, he talks about the Enlightenment. He quotes Montesquieu and talks about all of these revolutionary concepts that found their way into the Declaration of Independence, and how you need to have and how there were these pronouncements in the Declaration of Independence about judicial independence, which then found its way into the Constitution, and then Marbury versus Madison, judicial review, the idea of courts deciding the final say on constitutional questions, judicial independence. It's like, dude, what you've showed was that for you, conservative means conserving the crown, not conserving our democracy. I mean, you literally just conferred king-like authorities and not just it created this concept in the executive branch, but you've neutered the judiciary branch. And now you're whining about these threats of violence and intimidation and disinformation and all of these things that were from Trump. And it's not to say that there's nobody on the other side of the political spectrum who engages in this, but it's not at the high levels a both sides issue at all. I mean, Democrats aren't leading an insurrection. You heard Hakeem Jeffries when he said, look, we're going to have we have a president-elect. There's going to be, it's not this is not what we want. And the Republicans start clapping, and Hakeem Jeffries is like, yeah, we still do elections in the Democratic Party, and so Popok, let me throw it over to you here. But this report, let's talk about that briefly. And then I think it's worth talking about, though, a massive accomplishment by President Biden, 235 federal judges that he has appointed, and they've been confirmed to the bench.
If this annual report was issued by a company, it would be the Foundation for Securities Fraud. It is not an annual review of what matters to America. It is not. It does not address and completely ignores, that's your tone deaf argument, most of what America cares about and why America considers the Supreme Court to be so lowly regarded. If you would have told me, okay, well, what's in the annual report, Popok? Of course, he would have somehow addressed the immunity decision and the impact on American society. No. The Colorado 14th Amendment, Section 3 decision. No. The millions of dollars lining the pocket of Clarence Thomas from people who have business before the court. No. The upside down flags of Sam Alito and his wife. The flags of insurrection flown by a sitting United States Supreme Court justice. No. It's all about the 4 attacks on the independence of the federal judiciary, both foreign and domestic. He spends most, after I get through what I call the oil painting section of it, like you said, droning on about King George, which, if we were able to exhume the bodies of our framers and founding fathers or do a seance, I assure you that if we told them what that John Roberts court did in both the combination of the immunity decision and the insurrection disqualification provision of the 14th Amendment, they would just say, no, that is not what we intended. That is not why we left King George. And what did you do to the co-equal branches of government and the balance and checks and balances that we so delicately created? You destroyed them by levitating the presidency above the other 2 branches? So John Roberts, as you said, is completely tone deaf. What's the phrase the kids use on the internet? Doesn't know how to read the room. It doesn't know how to read the room. And so instead,
what they're using on the internet these days, Michael?
Yeah, that's on the internet.
That's what they're saying, the little kids.
Yeah, that's what the kids say. is this ageism again? All right.
No. I was point to parliamentary inquiry.
By the way, I am the demographic of our audience, so let's go. All right, so let's continue. So that's what you would have written about. Instead, John Roberts spends a considerable amount of ink attacking you and me, not by name, attacking Americans who have First Amendment rights to criticize the Supreme Court and what it's done, and basically says, I'm paraphrasing now, these kind of ill-conceived and uneducated criticisms of the court are uncalled for and unjust. I'm like, oh, poor John Roberts. I mean, one of the things that I've been talking about with Court Accountability Action over on Legal AF, the YouTube channel, is it the case that that the Supreme Court is the only entity, only stakeholder in our political republic that gets to declare what the Constitution says? Don't the people have a role and are at the table? And how does that work moving forward? And that's a dialogue, and that's a conversation I'm going to continue over on Legal AF with Court Accountability Action. But here he talks everything I wrote in the margin next to his commentary was it was Trump. It was a veiled criticism of somebody that looks and talks and acts exactly like Donald Trump. What public officials are attacking judges for being politically biased because of their race or their gender or other things because they don't like decision making? That sounds a lot. That's not Joe Biden. That's not Hunter Biden. That's not Bob Menendez, the senator from New Jersey. That's not any. Who is that? That's Donald Trump against Engoron, against Merchan, against Lewis Kaplan, the judge in the E. Jean Carroll case. So for, like you said, he's Dr. Frankenstein, and then he's talking about the monster that's ravishing the countryside. So that just completely disingenuous, without intellectual honesty whatsoever in the way he wrote this report. I mean, I guess he's got to write about something every year, but for it to be the attack on the judiciary, to try to salvage the reputation, which is in tatters because of their failure to abide by res judicata and precedent, and ripping out of the books not only precedent that's been on the books for 50 years or more, and a woman's right to choose and all the other things, and the Chevron decision about how administrative agencies protect our, through them, our water, our air, our energy, and everything else. But overturning precedent that it's only been on the books for 5 or 10 years, only because they have the numbers. Lisa Graves on Court Accountability and Action, and I just did a hot take over there that I think is up this weekend, in which she said, this is an illegitimate court because we've had for over 75 years Republican-dominated courts before. In fact, because of the way it went from Nixon, Ford, Reagan, Bush, we've always lived in a society where the Republicans, the small r Republicans, small r conservatives, have been in charge of the United States Supreme Court. That's not what's new. What's new is the callous calculation by the Federalist Society and Leonard Leo and Donald Trump and others to get onto the court people, to give them the numbers in order to overturn our constitutional guardrails and precedent, and to reverse all of the progress that we've made at the United States Supreme Court using our Constitution. That is the scandal. It's that they got Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett with 36 days left to go in an administration to join Thomas and Alito. That's the scandal. And then Roberts, rather than having any gravitas or any intellectual honesty, just gave up from being a moderate center-right and just joined regularly with his alt-right constituency. That's the scandal. It's not that we have Republicans in charge in the majority. It's how they got there and what their agenda was, why they were picked, and how they operate. That's not discussed at all in this report. And finally, this we're not talking about TikTok today, but we'll talk about it next week after the oral argument. He does do a little bit of a preview of where I think Justice Roberts' head is at about foreign interference with the judiciary and through social media, which I think is very interesting considering he's going to be presiding over the TikTok case in about 7 days' time.
Yeah, he dropped a strong hint in there that he is not a fan of TikTok, right, and he believes it to be interference by China in our elections, as well as in performing surveillance on America. He seemed to, without saying TikTok, he's pretty much described the case right there.
Welcome back. We don't always agree on Legal AF, but the hosts do our level best to give a rigorous analysis based on their own life and legal experience. We do it one place only, on Legal AF here on the MeidasTouch Network. And of course, we've got a new channel, Legal AF, the YouTube channel at Legal AF MTN. Help us get to 500,000 in the first quarter of 2025, 500,000 subscribers. We're already at 390,000 with your help, and we're only 3 months old. And I think that's a reflection that everybody recognizes that hot corner of law and politics is only going to get hotter come the new administration coming in January. We're here for it. We're glad you are too. Thank you for being part of the Legal AF audience. If this is your first time, take that clip, send it off to people. We're trying to expand our audience for 2025. It's that important. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.